What would the world be like if we all had jobs that were aligned with our natural skill set?
A lot of people stay stuck out of fear of taking their agency back. We grew the company from about 3 million in revenue to just under 30 in my 5 years there. I was burnt out. So my wife basically said, look, you got 3 options. You can change your attitude, you can quit this job, or we can get divorced.
First of all, that alone is a mic drop.
If you're gonna spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day on something for 30, 40, 50 years, you should pick something that is of service to the world and that you actually have a shot at being the best in the world at. It was like, I think you keep looking for a leader that's gonna inspire you, but you have too strong of opinions on what good leadership looks like. I think the only person you can work for is you.
You've become what I call unemployable.
That's right. I think that's a part of that shift of reclaiming your agency and power. I'm gonna embrace the pain of going and starting something and owning every dollar that comes in the door, but having freedom.
You want to make more money? You are in the right place. Welcome to the Hello 7 podcast. That's 7 as in 7 figures. I'm your host, Rachel Rogers.
So Barrett, I was trying to think of when we originally met, because we're both like OGs of the
Been
internet.
around a while.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen a lot of people go away.
Right. That's right. And a lot of people go away and come back, actually. That started
too.
happening too, yeah.
Yes. And then you also get to see people actually achieve their dreams. Like people blow up too,
Yeah.
right? So all those things happen.
Oh, yeah.
When you stick around for a while, you start to see the patterns. But I started back in 2010. When did you start as an entrepreneur?
2011 was my first business online, yeah.
Yes. So what was the first business?
First business was called Living for Monday. And I thought that career centers at colleges were doing a horrible job of giving graduates their full range of options. It was like a pipeline to Fortune 500 companies.
Right.
And I thought startups, small business, nonprofits should have a wider promotion range for graduates.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start a business that helped graduates see their full options and then go pursue things that would be more meaningful than a cog in a wheel at name your Fortune 500 company.
Right. Okay. And what made you start that? Did you have a background in that?
I just have this affliction where I view
Don't
work
we all?
through the mindset of, if you're going to spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day on something for 30, 40, 50 years, you should pick something that is of service to the world and that you actually have a shot at being the best in the world at, and not just go work on someone else's thing for a paycheck and glaze your eyes over while you're at work until you get done and go home and then you binge Netflix and drink alcohol and do whatever you do to cope.
Yes.
I think that there's this other way of being in the world, which is finding a lane, committing to becoming world-class, and then earning a living actually making a difference in the world. And I think those things can all be compatible. And I think I had a little bit of an immature view on it then, but if I look at the long arc of my career now, it's the same message. It's just slightly more mature now. So I had the affliction back then and I still have it now.
Yes. I had a similar affliction and it came from watching my husband. He worked for Verizon.
Yep.
He was a field tech. So he went in the manholes in New York City and really disgusting places.
Yeah.
And if you know him, he's such a clean person that it was just not compatible. Getting filthy every day was not something that he enjoyed, but he did it, and he made good money. He made 6 figures doing it, but he would literally get up in the morning and then he would sit on the side of the bed and do this.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
That's real.
And just watching him do that every morning, I was like, my God.
Yeah.
You've got to get the hell out of there. I don't care how much money it is. We could figure something else out. So just watching him do that. And also what I noticed is not with him, because actually he was lovely outside of hating his job. But I noticed that a lot of people, they hate work so much that it permeates everything else. So they come home cranky.
Yes.
And it's just and they're tired and they're just they have this, it just sort of lowers their, reaching their full potential in every way. Their creativity, their ideas, their ability to have fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Their ability to think differently than the corporate machine that they're working for.
Yep.
So I was just if we just all what would the world be like if we all had jobs that were aligned with our natural skill set?
Yes.
And actually loved our jobs.
Yeah.
ROI, the Millionaire Summit, is back for the 3rd time. It's happening in January 2025 for entrepreneurs that are looking to grow a 7-figure business and beyond. We'll have amazing speakers, incredible networking, lots of connection, community, and fun, and actionable steps that you can take to get a return on your investment in this amazing event. It's all happening January 15th through the 17th in Orange County, California, right outside of LA. So easy to fly to. And what's really special about this year is that we are including luxury accommodations with your ticket. That's right, you don't have to pay an extra fee for a hotel room. It's all included in your ticket. But these rooms will sell out and tickets are going fast. And the price goes up every week. So you will be rewarded for taking quick action. So make sure you go to hello7.co/ROI to get your ticket. You know, that is actually the impetus that got me down on the path of entrepreneurship. And it's what caused me to create Hello 7. And that's how I approach the work.
Right.
I teach people, what are you good at? They're always like, what business should I start? What are you good at? Right? What are your natural talents? Let's study you because you're the asset. And then once we study you and figure out what the talents are, then let's come up with an offer that matches what the market needs as well.
Yep.
Like literally, that's all it is. And why? Because if you're going to be your own boss, why have a job you hate?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
And that's surprisingly easy to do.
Oh my God, is
create
it?
A business that makes a new job that you hate when you left a thing to try and avoid that.
And you can't just quit, or you can, but it usually comes with lots of bills.
Yep. Totally. My best piece of advice, so we met when I was at a company called Fizzle, and my best piece of advice back then that I wish I had known when I started my first business is if you want to start a business, spend 5 years getting great at something first. In your path to creating something worthwhile that makes you wealthy, that also makes you or helps you make an impact is so much faster. But no one wants to hear that because they want to go start now.
Yes.
And sometimes you can do it at the same time, but sometimes the money pressure of starting before you're great at something actually doesn't allow you to become great at the thing you're trying to do because
Like
you're just constantly chasing money.
Yes.
And it's like you'll do anything to get paid when you're trying to put groceries in the fridge.
Right.
But there's a different thing that happens if you can kind of stick it out in whatever you're doing, crawling down the manholes or whatever, and spending an hour a day reading the 25 best books for the next 2 years on whatever it is you're hoping to do, and then putting some of that into practice at year 3 or year 6 after you've put that time in. Now you've got a head start that everyone else who started too early wishes they had. And I know it's hard to hear that when you're in a place where it's like, I'm dying inside.
Yes.
Because I've been there. But I think that there is something wise in that where if you can have the patience and be strategic in that way, you're going to take off way faster than if you're trying to become good at something while making money from it.
Yeah. I disagree with that advice.
That's great. It makes great podcast material.
What else is new? Well, and here's why, because I think it's just not a realistic option for a lot of people.
That's true.
Because
I agree with that.
Because I think actually getting a job where you can hone a skill that you want to use in the future is difficult, right? Sometimes you can't find a job that's going to pay you enough and is also going to let you hone the skills. Like that's a blessing if you have both in one way. The way that I would do that differently, I also agree that you don't necessarily need to take the leap and just like be like, let's see what happens and jump off a cliff. I think it's a slow process also, but how I would shift it is start a side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Because if your bills are paid with the main gig, then you have a side hustle and you can hone your skills at that side hustle. I personally think that you're not going to learn as much skill reading the books and studying as you are having somebody pay you and having the pressure of, I got to deliver.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? As soon as somebody gives you money, you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
You know, now I got to do it.
Right.
You know, like at first you're like, I just got to sell it.
Yeah.
Then once
it's the theory versus practice, you know? It's like, I think you owe it to whatever it is you're trying to do to have read the homework material.
Yes, I agree.
I'm so surprised by there's this guy named Dwarkesh Patel. He started a podcast and it's all about AI, and it has completely blown up in the world of engineering, startups, venture capital. He's one of the top podcasts in that space, and he was nobody like 3 years ago. He knew nothing about AI, but he went and read all of the base level research papers on it. He read the 5 textbooks that existed in the world. And all of a sudden, he was more proficient than 99% of people at just asking the right questions and sounding like he knew enough that the talented people in the space who were creating the industry could have a conversation with him.
Right.
So what was the difference? Well, everyone else who wanted to talk about AI is doing it like a goofball who has no idea what's going on.
Right.
He went and did the homework and then used that to his advantage and put himself on the line, right? It wasn't like read them at home in his bed and do nothing with it. It was read them at home and then go record a podcast with the original engineer or founder that led to Claude, which is one of the biggest models now. And that's a different thing to be on the line for something and have to actually practice it versus only reading the books.
Yes.
But I think you can set yourself apart by doing the homework when everyone else just wants the results and isn't willing to put the work in.
I agree. I think a lot of people don't respect their craft.
Yeah.
And don't take the time to hone their skills.
Yeah.
And you can absolutely get paid while you hone your skills, right? And like you either you're adjusting your pricing or you're telling people this is a beta, right? So like you're having an honest relationship with your potential clients and being true about where you're at and creating a container and learning in that container in some way.
Yep.
So I think there's room for that, but I agree with you. Like not reading the books, not studying, not taking the courses. Like that's, people sometimes ask me what my hobby is and I'm like, can business be my hobby? I don't have that many others, but I do have other hobbies, but not that many.
Yeah.
Like, but it's because I love to study business because it fascinates me and I like learning about other businesses and how they've grown. And the landscape is always changing. So there's always more to learn. And a lot of people just don't bother. And that makes a big difference, right? Like there's a lot of like saying that you want something. Okay, well, your actions need to match up with saying that you want the thing. And that means like actually putting the work in.
Right.
And
an example of this is the first time I ever coached somebody, it was they were going to be a graduate from college and their parent actually hired me because they were worried about them not being able to get a job, basically. I think I charged $50 an hour when I coached that person. And that was 13 years ago or something like that. I charge $1,500 an hour today to still coach for an hour. And the difference is the reps and the work I put in and the amount of demand that there is for me because there's only one me. But I embrace the fact that I was only worth $50 an hour now. Now I work with the kinds of people where when they pay me that amount of money, it's worth it to them because they have a big enough business they can see ROI on it.
Right.
And that's what's changed over the years is taking my skill set and applying it to more and more valuable applications, both for me and the people that I work with. But I couldn't have started charging $1,500 an hour. People would have laughed me out of the room.
Well, it depends on what it is, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Because there are certain topic areas where you do have expertise that you're bringing to the table, or it's just like there's not a lot of people that can advise on that topic, or the value that they're going to get is significant.
Right.
But typically, like as a coach, right, you're going to be able to get people bigger results with more and more experience.
Right. Well, I was young when I started. I was like 23. So that's the other thing. I
You're
didn't have any experience to go back on.
21-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. There's not a lot to lean on when you're in that space, But if you've been in a 20-year career,
of
that's
any kind,
different, right?
That
is different.
Yes.
You've got all kinds of background and skills and legitimacy, and it's just a matter of translating it.
Yes.
And so you might be able to start where I have gotten to, and the difference is you spent the last 20 years doing something that is valuable to people.
Right.
And so I think you're right on that some people can because they just have different background.
Right. It's based on the expertise. Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your career path.
Yep.
So you started with, what was it, Monday?
So I actually started as a management consultant.
Okay.
At Ernst & Young. Okay. And I went to a summer camp for abused and neglected children in state custody in the state of Georgia, which is where we're recording right now, my hometown. And this thing happened in the middle of the week where just that year they had hired a new executive director. And she ended up being a horrible cultural fit where she was really alienating a lot of the longtime volunteers who were there volunteering as counselors that week. So the chairman of the board came into our staff meeting midweek, something like Wednesday or Thursday, and said, hey, we've let this person go. She was not the right fit, and we're going to be hiring someone new, and we want them to have been a volunteer with us in the past. And so here I was at this summer camp working with children who had these really hard backgrounds. And this was their 1 week every year where they felt unconditional love. There's a one-to-one camper counselor relationship. It was just like this beautifully healing experience for everyone involved. And when he said, someone is going to come to work here 3 weeks from now that is in this room, and this is the work you're going to do for the next 5, 10, whatever years, is solving this problem for this population, it broke my brain related to going back to EY and working at a Fortune 5 company on their tax preparation processes. It was like I couldn't compute.
Right.
And that was really the impetus for saying, okay, I got to go start something. I thought about applying for a job, and there's a whole thing there, but basically that didn't work out. And I said, well, I can't stay at EY anymore. I got to start something.
Right.
And I want to help other people find the kinds of jobs that I just learned exist.
Yes.
And that's where Living for Monday came from. So I did that for 3 years. I interned for Seth Godin in the middle of that in his office in New York. He's an author, if anyone listening hasn't heard of him. And that was the thing that made me realize it was a very courageous act to start that first business. And I'm really glad I did it. It was like a real world MBA, but it was not working financially for me. I was in a ton of debt. I had been at it for almost 3 years, and I had just picked the wrong market and solution. It just wasn't a good business model, even though the idea was, I think, pretty pure and came from the right place. And that was the thing that gave me the courage to kind of say, you know what, I can call this a success for the learning. I can move on, go get a job, kind of like get my bearings again, and then I'll get another chance at it later.
Okay, so let me pause you there. With the first business, now you're a business coach, right? Yeah. So if you were to coach, 20-something-year-old Barrett who was running that business, what would you have him, do you think you would have advised him to change the industry, or do you think you would have advised him just to change do you feel like it was a workable model with like an experienced business coach coaching?
Maybe. The primary mistake I made was I chose college students as my market.
That's what I was thinking. Because you know what college students don't have?
They are poor.
They have no money.
They have money for textbooks and pizza. That's what they have money for, right?
Exactly. And a lot of them are obviously, not everybody, but a lot of them are going into immense debt.
Yes,
you know what I mean? So they don't have access to credit.
Right.
They have no money. They don't have a job. They can't get a job, So
it might have been workable if I made parents of college students my market.
Yes.
The couple of people in that space that hired me, it was kind of remedial. It was like their kids were not very employable, and that's why they needed help. And that's not a great solution when you're in that position as their coach, because it's kind of no-win.
Yes.
So I think it might have worked if I had chosen something more like people 5 to 10 years into their career who realized the path they were on is not the one they wanted to be on. They wanted to shift. But I don't think I had credibility in that market. So Ramit Sethi, who many people may recognize from I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and he's had this long storied career in our space as well. He was in that space with a course called Dream Job at the time, but he had 8 or 10 years on me of experience where he had a lot more credibility. And I'm not saying that meant there wasn't space for it, but I think I just couldn't talk with authority to that group of people.
Right.
And that's the shift I would have advised me to make.
Okay.
And so I just think I needed to go get more reps in on a couple businesses, which is what I did.
Okay. I just think it's interesting to rewind.
Could it have worked, right?
Yes, exactly. Because I think, people who are starting things now, their first idea, sometimes it's a flawed idea. Like making sure that the people who are your ideal clients can actually afford to pay you is like step number one. You know what I mean?
The other one I could have done is I could have worked with companies and helped them design recruiting strategies on campuses where working with some of the types of organizations, startups, small businesses, nonprofits, a $5,000 project for me at the time would have been a lot of money. And that's probably the budget range that those kinds of organizations could have afforded for me to put into place a strategy to recruit. So maybe I could have done that. That might have worked.
Yes. Okay. All right. So you closed that business and then what did you do next?
So I just wanted a job where the job description was clear. I knew I could do it, and someone would tell me what to do for a little while because I was tired. I was in debt. It was like, just put some money in the bank account. Tell me what to do. That's all I want. So a mentor of mine named Corbett Barr, also an internet OG that's actually not as online anymore. He was hiring someone to lead customer success for his company called Fizzle at the time. So I called him and I was like, hey, I'm looking. I'm shutting my thing down. He ended up hiring me. And I ran customer success for them. And within 3 or 4 months, I had my ambition back. It was like, all right, let's make this thing go vroom. And so I built out the customer success function. We hired someone to replace me in that role. And then I ended up leading growth and really building out our marketing strategy for that company for a couple of years.
Okay. And so that's actually where I think our paths overlapped.
Yep.
I met you through Fizzle.
Yeah.
I actually thought you were a business partner on Fizzle.
I wasn't. I was an employee. I became a partner.
Okay.
But I joined as an employee at first.
Okay. But so we were talking about how Fizzle was before its time because it was essentially like a business membership community where you could learn how to grow your business. You had a forum. We didn't have the tech that we have today.
Right.
So it was
was all custom built.
Yes.
It was there was no Teachable, there was no Thinkific, there was no Circle, none of this stuff.
Mighty Networks, none of it. Yeah. So it was like literally like old school forums. Almost like I feel like you built a version of like what AOL had with like chat rooms, where you go into a room to talk about legal, or you go into a room to talk about operations, or you go into a room to talk about marketing.
Right.
And then there was like regular coaching sessions and things like that.
Ton of courses. It was like the way we thought about it, and this reference might not even make sense to people anymore, but there was a business called lynda.com. It became LinkedIn Learning when it got acquired. And lynda.com was this couple, actually, I think originally, and they were producing courses in their garage on all kinds of stuff. And everything got produced in-house. We were producing end-to-end courses on everything a business owner needed to know, from how to come up with a business idea to detailed Google Analytics tutorials and everything in between, how to hire your first employee. And so we had this whole catalog of courses that actually was so wide-ranging it overwhelmed people when they got in there. And that became a big business problem for us. But that's what I mean when it was ahead of its time. It was like creator economy wasn't a term.
Right. It wasn't a thing.
I think we talked about like bloggers as our core market at the time because that's what most of the internet was at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I was running my small law practice and was just looking to learn more about marketing and grow it. And I started joining a lot of things because I realized my clients were in there.
Yes.
Because my clients were other entrepreneurs who were trying to grow their businesses. And so I would go into these spaces, I'd learn some things and I'd meet people, and I would just make myself useful in the forums.
Right.
Like they would ask legal questions and I'm like, I got that.
That's good marketing.
Yeah. And and also the owners of that forum don't mind because I'm adding value and I'm not trying to directly sell it.
Right.
I'm just answering their questions. And then once I answer their questions, they DM me or come find me somewhere because now they know I exist. Right. So that was my strategy back then. But yeah, Fizzle was great. I also remember like the design was really great. Like the quality of the production was great, especially for back then. Everything looked really good.
Yeah, it was like this 3-camera angle type stuff, good mics.
Yeah. Can you even imagine?
No.
Like that wasn't even a thought in my mind.
I know.
Like buying a separate camera outside of like whatever the webcam was that came with the laptop. Like,
I mean, my first podcast, it was on Skype with eCam recorder.
Oh my
God. As the thing that was recording the thing, man.
Skype,
the internet was different back then. I mean, look at this. This is beautiful. We're in a beautiful studio. You know, it's like pro level stuff. Back then, it was brutal.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I know. But now the production quality has gotten so good. Content creation. Yeah. It's almost like it's starting to go back to a place where maybe it's there's a gate again.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's sort of like all of these platforms being created, there was no gatekeeper. Now you just create content and go.
Right.
And now that the quality is getting so high, it's kind of like, okay, now there's a gate again because you have to spend money for equipment or professionals or whatever. To be able to, or I guess you could just get really good at figuring out the lighting and all of that.
Yeah.
And
there's like an interesting fake grittiness thing going on right now too. That's kind of like counterculture to all the high production value. That's why you see the little mics in the hand is it's like faking low production value, but then there's still lights behind them and stuff. And so it's just this funny thing.
Yes, exactly. I will say like the videos that do the best for me on social media is like when I'm walking and talking sweaty and disgusting first thing in the morning.
That's right.
And it's when I have time. Yeah. Like I go for a walk and then I'm like, okay, let me drop a gem for y'all.
Yeah, it was like you talking about fall in New York the other day.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed with the fall leaves.
It's great. It's personal. It's real, you know?
Yes.
So there's a place for both, I think. But
exactly. But I find, well, at least on YouTube, I think people are moving towards like more high production. On social media, it's like, it's so funny. I was talking to a friend and she was like, you have to just be willing to be ugly on the internet. Like if you want to win today, you got to be ugly on the internet.
Be relatable, you know?
Yes.
Everyone wakes up and looks like crap in the morning.
Yeah.
So, you know, people want to see
Not me.
that,
I look like this when I first wake up.
Of course. I didn't mean to offend you that way, Rachel. How could I?
Don't let
how
me
could
in,
I be
okay?
confused? That's right.
But yes, I'm still very much like, you will never see me in my pajamas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, no. But it's so funny. I'm like, oh, I'm giving like boomer energy now. Because I'm like,
Oh, no.
I can't say that on there. I can't be seen like that on the internet. I'm like, oh my God, I'm the old person.
Uh-huh.
This is so weird.
Yeah.
How did I become old?
You start talking about recording on Skype, and yeah.
The old equipment.
Back in my day, we did things different,
Okay, so tell me what happened with Fizzle.
Okay, so Fizzle. We had a great thing going. I started leading marketing. This is really where I built my marketing chops.
Yes.
I started learning channel-based marketing, building systems to continuously fuel growth. Membership-based businesses are hard.
People don't understand, like, listen, getting clients in is one thing, keeping them is another.
Yeah, all fun and games until you start seeing the churn rate.
Oh my
right?
God, churn. It's the stuff of nightmares.
We got to the point where we had a pretty good system going and growth was going well. I had negotiated being a partner in the business, and I just started getting really frustrated that I felt like we weren't treating it like professionals. I had goals for my career. I wanted to earn more money. I wanted to grow the business. And that just wasn't aligned across the team.
Okay.
And because I was a minority partner in it, the two main partners, basically the CEO decided, because I was a minority partner and me and the other partner were in conflict, that I was the one that had to go. So I got fired.
Wow.
Only time in my life I've ever been fired. And Corbett, I love you if you end up listening to this. And we're all good on that end. But I didn't know how to manage my own agency at the time.
Yes.
I think I was just expressing it in more and more frustration that we weren't getting results. And I felt like that was because we weren't aligned on how quickly we needed to move.
Yeah.
And so I got some maturity from that. But I left there and I ended up joining up with my friend Nathan, who runs formerly ConvertKit, now Kit.
Yes.
And led marketing for them for a little while, a year and a half, and then became COO there. And that was kind of the bulk of a 5-year period before I transitioned into what I'm doing now.
Yeah. So you were an employee for a long time.
Yeah, like 7 years.
Wow. Okay. So what made you say yes to joining Nathan?
Well, I started coaching in between those two things. I went back to coaching because I knew, getting fired is unexpected always.
Yes.
And I needed to make sure we could produce income for my fiance and I at the time, wife now. We were in debt still from my first business. And so I just got to work.
Yeah.
Started calling up potential customers, and had a pretty good little client portfolio. I was actually looking at two things. One was I had a group of people who wanted to go buy an existing business that was in the creator economy. It was a software company, and I was going to become CEO if we did that. Or Nathan and I were talking about me joining ConvertKit. And basically the deal to buy this other company fell apart. And so ConvertKit was kind of my main option at that point. And I needed income.
Yeah.
And he had a role for me where I could go in and do some things I felt like I was going to be good at. And so I joined up, and that was a good run.
What was the role you joined as?
It was technically like brand projects or something. Nathan had been recruiting me for a while. And so I turned down 2 like exec level roles, leading customer success and then leading marketing. And so then I came knocking and was like, I'm available. And he said, great, I don't have any roles for you.
Right, exactly.
And so we just came up with a role that was like doing a series of documentaries, starting our conference, Craft and Commerce, doing the state of the blogging industry report that we put out that time.
So you started all of those.
Yeah.
Those are like pinnacle marketing things that ConvertKit, Kit now, still does to this day.
Yeah, and those were all pretty much, the first versions were low production value, high like elbow grease kind of efforts to get started. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So then you do that. How did you wind up COO?
The head of marketing basically stepped down and said, I want to do sales. Barrett should be my boss. So I started leading marketing. About a year and a half into my tenure there, I decided with the maturity from Fizzle, this isn't working for me. There were just some dynamics going on amongst the team that I said, like, I think this isn't good for me. I'm going to leave. So I went and got a job offer from a mentor of mine in New York, and took it actually. And I told Nathan, hey, I'm leaving. I love you. Rooting for you. This isn't working for me. And I had been telling him for a while, hey, I think you need a number 2 in the company, like a clear number 2 to do all the things you don't like doing.
Yes. Don't we all?
Yes, right. We all can use, all CEOs can use a number 2.
Mine, a special place in my heart.
It's a real thing.
Literally, because you can't get there without that person. Like, you need that right hand.
It's both halves of an Oreo, yin and yang, however you want to think about it.
Yes.
And so I told him I was leaving. It was a definitive thing. We like signed a lease in New York. We were moving. And he came back 48 hours later and he said, no, I think you should stay as COO. That really threw a wrench in things because it was like, well, this is a problem. And I actually ended up saying no to the job offer and staying, obviously, as COO, because I said that already. And we had another 3.5-year run. So we grew the company from about 3 million in revenue to just under 30 in my 5 years there.
Amazing.
Learned a ton.
Yeah, I bet. I can't even imagine. Well, I guess I can because I'm on that road.
Yeah,
I'm on that
you're in it right now, right? Yeah.
I'm right in the midst of it. Yes. Okay. So what made you decide your tenure at ConvertKit was done?
My wife. She sat me down on our couch one night. It was about a year into the pandemic, a little less than a year. And she said, look, this isn't working. You know, we had a young son at home. He was a little more than a year old. And I was working nonstop. I was constantly just absent. Even if I was present, I was not present mentally.
Yes.
I was frustrated and kind of angry with, to your point earlier, I was doing a lot of the things that are signs that just something's off here.
Right.
And I was burnt out. It was like, I didn't have agency on some things that really mattered to me. Nathan and I actually did a great podcast episode on this that we did as a crossover.
Yes.
And talked about a lot of this. But frankly, I thought we should be hiring a lot more people. And Nathan really wanted to keep the team small. And that wasn't working for me. And it started to crescendo to this point where I was like looking for someone to blame and I was getting really frustrated. And so my wife basically said, look, you got 3 options. You can change your attitude, you can quit this job, or we can get divorced.
Ooh.
And the divorce was not option 1, right? It was like,
but she's like, this is where it's going.
Right.
Yes.
And that was obviously a critical point for me.
Yes.
And so Nathan came into a meeting one day and said, listen, I think I want to pause hiring for 18 months. I don't want to add any more people. And I said, if that's true, man, I don't have it in the tank. I got to go. And so I want you to think about it for 2 weeks. And if you come back and that's what's important to you, I think we should make a plan for me to leave. And that's what was important to him. And so we made a 6-month off-ramp plan. And I was really thoughtful. I'm very proud of the way we did it. And I kind of sailed off into the great unknown after that.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said for beautiful exits.
Yeah.
And I feel like the way that was handled was very gracefully because I watched it all, you know, and I was like, oh, gasp, you know?
Yeah.
And
it was like a business divorce.
Yes. And it's you know, these dynamic duos, right? And so it's always surprising when you see, you know, they don't necessarily have to last forever. Right. And there's not necessarily always drama or gossip or something terrible. It's just kind of like we disagreed and we wanted to do things differently. And so now we're doing things differently. You know,
think there's some maturity to that. I wanted it to be before the relationship deteriorated.
Right.
You know, before we got to that mode of things, I just wanted to say like, look, I think we want different things. I think we see different futures.
Right.
And ultimately it's his company. And it was important that I respected that. I think the moment you're at a company and it's not yours, or it's only you're a minority owner in it, like I was, and you are taking away from the founder's vision, you either need to get in line and figure out how to make peace with that, or you need to leave.
Yeah.
Because the team will know, even if you're not saying it. It
so
changes
true.
the way you show up.
The lack of alignment between leadership is always palpable. They may not know what's going on, but they know something's not right. And then it creates confusion about like, who are we supposed to follow? Who am I supposed to be loyal to?
And that's not right.
Yeah. And one thing that it won't do is grow the company.
And that's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It actually will just pause everything.
Yeah.
So you decide to leave. What are you thinking that your plan is? Because this is such an inflection point for so many people where they're like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to start something else. Maybe be an entrepreneur, maybe go somewhere else. Like a career transition. And they're terrified to leave. Like they're terrified. And it's like all the same things. It's not working for me. It's time for me to go. And I'm so afraid of the unknown. So like, what would you say to those people? And how did you handle that for yourself?
Okay. So a couple of lessons. One is marry up to the kind of person that will say to you the thing that my wife said to me.
Yes.
I felt like I had permission to make a hard decision at that point and that I wouldn't be letting her down.
Okay.
And I didn't realize I was hanging on to that I felt responsible to stay in this role even though it wasn't working, until she said to me, it would be better for us if this weren't this way anymore.
Right. So like she was, to break that down, she was okay with a financial hit for the sake of...
It was better than what was happening.
Yes.
Right.
It's like, you don't want that, but if we have to do that, that's better than you just not being present.
And basically, I trust you to figure it out.
Right.
You know? So that's the first thing. The second thing is ownership is what builds wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're at the point of negotiating for a role, you should anticipate that you will not have that role forever. And the way you get maximum value from a role is to negotiate equity or ownership.
Right.
Obviously you get a salary and benefits and all that. But if I had to kind of like balance those things, I always want ownership in a thing I'm building because I show up like an owner.
Right.
And I had done that. The other thing I'll say is it's only as good as the contract on paper, even if you love the other person to death. Contracts are what define ownership. And so because I had ownership, I had the option of selling some stock at that point, where that gave me enough in the bank that I could have some flexibility and some time to figure out what I wanted to do.
Awesome.
So I had done a lot ahead of time.
I wonder if I might have been the buyer of that stock.
You might have been, at least a piece of it. Yeah.
Exactly. 'Cause I spent a decent amount of money, but obviously compared to what the value is, small. But yeah, so I think I was becoming an investor
at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know because I think your announcement came after that.
That's right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, fun fact, I sold enough that we would have room and flexibility, and kept enough that if it continued to take off, that would also build wealth.
Yes.
So that was the calculation for me. And I sold at peak stock market and rode the stock market down for 2 years while ConvertKit continued to grow. So it was a bad financial decision from maximizing the value of every share or every dollar. It was a great financial decision because it was the only way to buy flexibility.
Yes. So that you have time to decide.
Time. Exactly.
Yes.
So that was the key. And I know that's not great advice if you're at the point where you need to leave.
No, it is great advice because it's real.
Yeah.
I think there's everyone's afraid to say anything that's opposite than the personal finance gurus. And I'll be the first one to be like, sometimes you have to spend money.
Yeah.
Period. Sometimes you are borrowing against your 401k or straight up taking it out because that's what you need to get through the short term.
Right.
And then you have to have a plan, of course, of how you're going to build that back up.
Yeah.
But that's what it is sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's just like, oh no, just struggle. Or it's like the rent can't get any lower.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I appreciate the realness of the advice.
That's just what it is.
Yeah.
So I spent the next 18 months basically trying to avoid the fact that I was ready to go to work for myself.
Right.
And I realized that, so I did a couple different things, and I'll fast forward basically just to say I went back to work at another startup in an executive role. It was working on reversing climate change. It was like most important mission I could imagine.
Yes.
And I thought that was the problem. It's like, if I had a more important mission, I wouldn't get as burnt out. I got 3 months in and I felt exactly how I felt at ConvertKit.
Wow.
All new people, completely different company, different mission, different role.
Burnt out again.
Same exact feeling.
Wow.
And my executive coach at the time, Andy, shout out, I love you. He basically said to me, so what are you taking away from this? And I kind of hemmed and hawed. And finally he was like, I think you keep looking for a leader that's going to inspire you, but you have too strong of opinions on what good leadership looks like. I think the only person you can work for is you.
Yes. You've
And that
become
hit
what
me
I
like
call
this ton of bricks.
unemployable.
That's right. That's right. That's great social media content right there. Saying unemployable at the same time. This is how the internet breaks your brain. Just thinking clips. So I just had to come to terms that
why did it devastate you? Why were you scared to go back?
I
Because
was
you've done it
scared
before.
of taking responsibility for all of it.
Yes.
There's just a weight to it.
Oh, yes, there is.
Yeah. Every dollar that comes in, you have to take ownership over.
Yes.
And there's no excuses. There's nobody else to point the finger at. And that's the hump I had to overcome was like, all right, yeah, I'm going to go take responsibility for every dollar again. Let's get after it.
Yes.
But that took some time.
Yeah.
And it took some time in my relationship too, because I was basically saying, okay, I know it's been 18 months, but now I'm going to go start.
Yes.
And here's my plan.
Right.
Here's the runway we've got. Here's
and
the
starting
financial
means
plan.
that there's not a salary that starts to hit the bank account within
That's
2
right.
weeks.
I got to go make it happen, you know?
Exactly.
And so that was a whole conversation at home. It was actually a really hard one because I had about 2 months earlier promised my wife I'd stay steady while she changed careers. And
that's always fun.
Yeah. But it was a really important moment in our marriage and in my life because I was scared of failing again, really was what it came down to because my first one failed. And I needed to just take ownership that 10 years had passed and I had different skills now and I was going to be fine.
Yes.
So that was the big change.
Yeah. I think that's so true. I see that so much with entrepreneurs. They have a launch doesn't go the right way, so they just stop launching, you know, or they just stop marketing. And it's like, girl, you definitely gonna fail now. You know, we have to get over those failures. And I think the muscle to build is like, how quickly can you get back on the horse?
Yes.
You know,
it's an experiment, not a failure. You learned something about what didn't work so that next time, if anyone who did one launch and immediately had a $500,000 business, it's like, good on you.
Right.
But everyone else runs a shitty launch first and then they learn from it.
Or 8 shitty launches.
Yeah, exactly, right?
You
and
know,
then
with like,
you're an overnight success.
2% more customers each one. And then suddenly you learn the right thing that tweaks it just so.
That's right.
And it blows up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell us what you're doing now.
Okay, so now I work with creator founders, I call them. So they're creators that have now built a business that's at the point where it could scale and support a team, or they could settle in and stabilize and just earn a great living from it. They're typically doing about $1 million in revenue, and they've reached this point where they've achieved all their goals that they once had. And there's this weird thing that happens on the other side of that where it's like, I just lost the organizing force for all my work.
Right.
I was trying to make it forever, and now I've made it. And there can be depression, fear, anxiety over like, I don't know where to go from here.
Right. What's my next thing?
So
What's
I typically start working with people right at that point where they're
Yes.
figuring out, do I want to build a big team and grow this thing into something even more than me? Or do I want to solidify myself as a creator and build systems so that I can enjoy my life while still earning the income I earn? And I help them through all of the emotional challenges that come from that kind of choice point.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
And I imagine that you're also helping them figure out how to hire a number 2, because that's probably what a lot of them
Once they
need
take
at
that
point.
path, I end up working often with executive teams.
Yes.
And coaching the whole team on their dynamics and on their individual growth.
Awesome. And are you liking it?
I love it. It's very meaningful to me. It also creates the income stream. I say that I'm a writer and podcaster with coaching as my business model.
Yeah.
Writing is really important to me. That's how I identify as a creator. My podcast is very important to me, and I invest a lot of time and resources into that, but they're not what makes me money.
Right.
And I don't need them to, because I make great money coaching. And so that's the kind of like symbiosis of my setup.
Right. So you have like a way to fund your creator life.
Exactly. Right.
Which is so important.
Yep.
Okay, so if we could distill it down. Thank you for sharing your career path, because I think it's important for people to see like it's a journey, you know, and to see like entrepreneurship can be for a time and then it can end and then you can go back to it. You can be an entrepreneurial employee working at a startup. So like there's a lot of different pathways. So could you like sum up, what would your career advice be? You know, maybe 1 to 3 pieces of advice that you would give someone who's like, okay, I'm at a job that's not working for me. Is it entrepreneurship? Do I just start a side hustle? Do I go find another job? Like, what should I do? What's your advice to them?
Yeah. So the first thing that I say to everyone is, if you're unhappy in your job, you need to take your agency back. And your agency is either you're staying there because it's better for you than the alternative, or you need to own exactly what I had to own, which is this does not work for me, so I need to choose another option.
Right.
And I think a lot of people stay stuck out of fear of taking their agency back.
Right.
Because the default decision they're making is actually this is more comfortable than the alternative.
Yeah. I think people are afraid of their own power.
Yeah.
In truth.
I think that's right.
So they pretend they have none and that everybody else is in control, and it's like, no, you chose this, right? This is all you, boo-boo.
And that's hard to hear.
Yes.
Especially when you're in it and in pain. Like I have empathy for that.
Yes.
But I see it consistently. The thing that has to happen first is you got to take the power back.
Yes.
And you got to say, this is a choice I'm making.
Right.
And I'm either going to stay here and make that choice, or I'm going to embrace the pain of that, or I'm going to embrace the pain of going and starting something and owning every dollar that comes in the door, but having freedom.
Yes. Choose your hard.
That's right. Choose your hard, choose your pain. I think it's really important. And by the way, I work with entrepreneurs doing millions of dollars in revenue who also end up feeling stuck for the same reasons.
Yes.
And so that's a big shift there too, is just like, it's a way of operating going from basically low agency to high agency.
Yes.
And I think it's a big change in how you live your life once you can do that.
I love that. First of all, that alone is a mic drop, right? Like taking back control of how you run your life. And when you're making many millions, it's scary to change anything.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, I really see a vision. I know we got here, but my vision is here. And we have to take another risk that's even like bigger than any risk I've ever taken before to get to that next level. So it's like, you just have to keep building that muscle because you're going to keep needing it.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't go away just because you're making millions.
And it feels like if I stay still, everything will be okay.
Right. And
that doesn't work either.
That's not going to work.
And that's the uncomfortable truth.
Anything else that you would share with them?
The other one that I see consistently in folks is, for whatever reason in society today, I think that we don't, and maybe this is changing with the generation behind us, but I think a lot of people, at least in my generation, which is millennials and older, do not process our emotions fully. We repress, and it ends up in our bodies and in us getting sick and in broken relationships. And one of the biggest things that I teach and coach on new entrepreneurs and experienced ones is learning to understand what your emotions are telling you.
Right.
It's like, what is the sensation in your body right now? What emotion is that attached to? And what do you need to process related to that? Or what conversation do you need to have so that you can move forward? That stuff holds everyone back.
Yes.
And it sounds like, well, that's soft. And it's not soft, it's human.
Yes.
If you're feeling angry at someone for something that they've done in your life and you feel like you're not allowed to say something, you're not supposed to say something, that is going to eat at you and it's going to damage that relationship. And I think that was an example of what I had to do with my wife was say, listen, I know I made this commitment and it's probably going to make you angry right now, but I can't stay here.
Yeah.
I have to go on this path and here's my plan. I will take care of us. I owe you that, but I have to move.
Yeah.
And I think that's a part of that shift of reclaiming your agency and power, but it's a different skill to say, whoa, I'm feeling really anxious right now. And I realize that that's because this matters to me.
Yes.
Right?
Your emotions are a signal and they're telling you where to go.
Yep.
You can ignore them if you want to, but they're not going to go away.
Yep.
They're, in fact,
that's probably not what you expected from me, but I just think it's this incredible skill set.
I love that. Yeah. Because I think that's what you get with experience is you get to see the patterns.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Barrett.
Yeah, tell
everybody where they can find you if they want to listen to your podcast.
Yeah, so goodworkshow.com, 2-hour-long conversations with people who are a combination of world-class at what they do, earn great money doing it, and want to make an impact that lasts beyond them and leave a legacy. Really deep human stories about how they became capable of doing their work. So
awesome.
That's the best place.
Yeah, sounds amazing. All right, y'all. Well, thank you. That was another episode. It's a wrap.
We did it.
We did it.
Hey, do you enjoy money? I do. If you want to make more money, then you need to join We Should All Be Millionaires, the club. Go to hello7.co/club to see everything you get once you become a member. hello7.co/club. In the club, we teach you how to maximize your earning potential, how to make better financial and business decisions, how to set up systems so that you're building wealth over time. We keep you focused on your financial and business goals, and we do fun activities throughout the year to keep you motivated. During our last money-making challenge, our club members earned a grand total of $3,519,262.66. Okay? $3.5 million as a community. That's a lot of money, y'all. If you want to get in on this, go to hello7.co/club and become a member.